Hey everybody, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse.
You're watching Disruptive Investing. And will AI disrupt Hollywood?
AI is evolving so fast.
Early last year, most people had trouble saying ChatGPT, including myself. ChatGTP, ChatGPP, Chat what? Now many of us are like, yeah, I spent 4 hours talking to ChatGPT-4. I spent more time with it than my kids.
ChatGPT, I much prefer Bard.
Bard? I prefer Perplexity AI.
Well, I prefer Grok AI. It has a way better sense of humor.
Now, we went from knowing nothing about AI to using it as a tool.
It's estimated that there are now at least 250 million OpenAI accounts.
Yeah, in less than a year, a technology went from something that only lived in science fiction to reality, and millions of people and organizations around the world started using it.
And it's not just being used for conversations or high school students writing term papers. It's being used for things like this.
These clips that you're seeing right now are generated entirely by AI. Programs like Runway ML, Synthesia, HeyGen, and Pika Labs, just to name a few. They've all started popping up and they're being used like crazy to make content. All right, so let's take a step back for a minute. I used to work in Hollywood back in the early 90s. I worked at a video editing company. It's a building with big banks of videotape machines and things called switchers that switch between different tape decks. And if you wanted to edit a TV show or a commercial, you'd come in with a whole box of beta tapes from your cameras. We had a whole big room full of tape machines of all kinds, and we had a tape operator, and his job was to make copies of tapes that we may need to edit feed from simultaneously. So part of the editing session was just getting tapes copied. And then when the editing session would begin, the clients would sit in a cozy room with a guy called a video editor whose job was to run the switcher and other graphics machines. He would constantly have to tell the tape operator in the other room to switch tapes out to different machines as they built the show. And get this, it was called linear editing. So once you started editing, you couldn't go back and make changes unless you wanted to lose all the work you had done back to that point. This seemed crazy to me even back then. I mean, we had so much money tied up in expensive tape decks. We had one tape deck, a Sony D1. It was one of the first digital tapes. It's this big, bulky thing. You're seeing a picture of it here, but it's this big, the tape. It was so expensive, this machine. The machine cost $1 million, right? In the beginning, we didn't have enough work to use it that frequently, so I would have to drive across LA, pick up the machine and rent it for like a day or a week rental. Then I heard about these non-linear editing programs that used computers, systems like Avid and DVision. So we installed a DVision computer system in one of our bays. Then I left LA just as some clients actually started using them to edit. I remember it was a multi-day process because you would have to come in and digitize the client's analog tapes to digital. That took days. And many people in the industry poo-pooed it. They were like, that's crazy. It takes way too long. Why do you need non-linear? That's just for people who don't know what they're doing. I bring this up not to date myself, which obviously I just did, but to show what it looks like when industries get disrupted. If you weren't in the video industry in the 90s, then you probably didn't know that any of that happened. Lots of tape operators and old school video editors who didn't keep up with the new tech lost their jobs. Manufacturers of tape machines like Sony and switchers like Grass Valley either adapted to the new nonlinear video editing tech or they were replaced. And it all happened without most of us noticing a thing.
But you're a disruptive investor. You should be paying attention to these disruptions because they can make you money or keep you from losing money.
That non-linear video editing tech in the 90s took a few years to unfold. The computers weren't quite up to the task in the beginning. They weren't quite powerful enough yet, and they were expensive.
But as the personal computer market exploded, costs came down, speeds went up, and soon computers were powerful enough and cheap enough that the entire industry switched. And what you're watching now has been edited digitally using a program like Adobe Premiere running on a laptop or a desktop PC.
If I had told most industry folks in Hollywood in the early 90s about this, editing digital 1080p or 4K footage that was recorded by a digital camera onto a tiny SD card, sent over the internet to an editor in a different state or country, then non-linearly edited on an off-the-shelf laptop within an hour, and then sent back over the internet so that people could watch it on the internet?
Most people wouldn't have even understood what you were saying, let alone believe you.
How could it go from being a service only available for hundreds of dollars an hour that took place in a giant office building in Hollywood with millions of dollars worth of equipment by people who had trained for years to know how to do it and relying on different trained people with different specialties to being done by kids on laptops. So back to present day, Earth, 2024. If AI is now able to create video and audio content from text prompts that you give it, create a war scene with lying dog-faced pony soldiers.
In a world where bravery knows no bounds, comes an epic tale of the most unlikely heroes.
Then I do believe we are about to see a disruption to the entertainment industry. If I don't have to hire dog wranglers and cinematographers and costumers and set designers and actors and directors and camera people and location scouts and caterers and trailers for the stars and fly people to locations and set up for days of filming, all to get a few seconds of footage, then not only did I just save a boatload of money, but I saved a boatload of time, and I just removed a boatload of risk. Because what if after all that work shooting that scene, I don't really like it or I don't really need it? Do you know how much stuff gets left on the cutting room floor? And what if something goes wrong and my lead dog actor gets sick or gets hurt during a stunt? Oh yeah, not to mention, I don't need stunt actors or explosion experts and CGI artists and lights and green screens and trapeze setups.
This is why films cost so much money to produce. The average Hollywood movie produced in 2023 cost $100 million.
You can barely make an independent, low-budget film for less than a few $1,000,000 today. That means that many would-be filmmakers up until now can't afford to make their art.
But if these AI tools that we've been showing you are any indication about what's to come, as Elon tweeted a couple of weeks ago, AI movies next year.
Which is this year. Okay, so if you followed us so far and you're saying, okay, so AI could become a tool for the entertainment industry, so what? We've been moving towards more and more CGI in films and TV shows for years.
Well, first question is usually how big is the TAM, or the total addressable market? How big is the global entertainment industry?
So measured by total revenue, in 2023, the global entertainment industry, that's film, TV, music, gaming, and more, revenue was around $2.14 trillion. Companies like Netflix, Amazon Video, Disney Plus, Warner Brothers Discovery, Hulu, Apple TV Plus, Paramount Plus, Pluto TV, and Comcast Peacock spent billions of dollars each on content. Now that money got spread out to writers, directors, producers, actors, set designers, cinematographers, set builders, electricians, crane operators, dialogue coaches, animal wranglers, gaffers, costume designers and makers, location scouts, billions of dollars that is going to quickly dry up from these folks as content companies move to AI for making their films and TV shows.
All these companies that employ millions of people. Take a look at this chart of just the US. 4.8 million people just in the US worked for the arts and entertainment industry.
Now, look at the dip during COVID in 2020 and 2021. The number dropped from 4 million before COVID to 3.57 million from 2019 to 2020. And do you remember how many people in this industry were affected? We heard all over social media and in the news about how many people were affected. Productions couldn't take place because of COVID, and so about 500,000 people were out of work that year.
Now imagine when many, if not most, films and TV productions are generated with AI instead of with humans. It'll be good for some people. I'll be able to create my film trilogy masterpiece for a few $1,000s instead of hundreds of millions.
So many new artists will be able to create new works, but millions of people won't be needed anymore. As a content consumer, it might be great, right? If blockbusters don't cost hundreds of millions to make, then maybe we'll get cheaper streaming fees and ticket prices.
But what about companies that make cameras?
What about companies that make lights?
And cranes and makeup companies?
Do you see where we're going with this? It's going to be a disruption. It's going to be big. It's going to be messy. There's going to be a lot of winners and a lot of losers. Now, the first step to wrapping your head around this as an investor is to be aware of it and to believe it's coming. There's a lot of pushback to this idea that AI will disrupt Hollywood. Nobody's going to want to watch AI actors.
AI is not going to write stories like humans can.
What about all the documentaries?
And those may be valid points. I don't think that AI necessarily will take over 100%.
I agree. I personally would like to keep watching real humans, but watching dog-faced pony soldiers could be fun too.
And I mean, to talk about documentaries, documentaries are some of the only movies that you watch that are true, right? With real people in them. You're more than happy to sit down and watch a completely fake story with fake people, like not just even actors, but like completely CGI created actors or characters within the story. You're willing to sit there and watch a lot of fake stuff.
Oh, look at The Simpsons.
Right. Sure, animated, all sorts of different things. We're used to seeing not real people in the movies.
Right.
It's the movies, baby. So I can totally see how this can come in and dominate a lot of the movie industry without anyone really even batting an eye, because we won't probably notice.
I mean, you probably don't remember this, but when The Simpsons started decades ago, it was an army of animators to make just a show that's just an animated show. Well, now with AI, you're not going to need anybody to animate it.
As we said, the industry is a $4 trillion industry. So even if AI only takes 25% of the market share, that would be $1 trillion a year shifted away from humans.
As a disruptive investor, you know what I'm going to say. You need to do the work if you want to be successful. You need to dive in and learn. And the amazing part is that if I had asked you to do that in the 1990s, it would have been really hard. You'd have to travel to LA or some other entertainment industry town and get onto a film set or into an editing bay.
But today, you can use the same AI tools as everyone else. You can use text-to-AI tools like Runway ML for free. I'm not saying you have to make a full-length movie, but you can get in there and dabble.
You can follow people on X that are on the cutting edge of this work and learn about the industry through them.
Because when we're talking about, AI disrupting Hollywood, I think that a lot of us are thinking that it's going to be AI writers writing AI stories with AI actors, and that it's going to be this completely fake thing. And that might be the case, or it might be the case a lot more akin to book authors, right? It doesn't take hundreds of thousands of people to write a book. It takes like one guy and a typewriter. So maybe that's going to be more the direction that we're going to be moving in, where it's going to be the most intelligent people creating some of the most intelligent stories that used to not be able to be told, because you'd go to a Hollywood producer and they'd say, no, man, hey, man, that's not commercial, dude. We need to sell this thing. This thing is going to cost millions of dollars to produce. So if it doesn't sell, your story isn't going to get out there, man.
That's a really good point, because if you were pitching a story about, like, say, a space station, the producers are going to be like, yeah, but that's so expensive, the sets and all the CGI. So let's rewrite this as a bar scene, you know? Or if you were a young filmmaker who wanted to have real actors, but then your cut scenes, you wanted to show them on a different planet, or you wanted to show them doing a car chase, that part of your production was so prohibitively expensive, you couldn't make the movie. Now you could have real actors shooting a scene with real people in a police station or whatever. And then when you want to do your car scene chase, have that AI generated.
Because, think about Game of Thrones for a second, right? How many millions of dollars were they spending per episode at one point?
Tens and tens of millions.
It was a great show we all agree up until season 8 when he stopped writing it. That tells you something, right? Yeah. Do you know how much easier it would have been for him to generate it using AI if that was something that George R.R. Martin was into?
Right.
Instead of him having to go to Hollywood, find the two bozos who did Game of Thrones, have to sit there and probably fix all of their mistakes until he ran out of material, and then they simply drove it into the ground as soon as they ran out of books.
Well, and the other thing is, as an audience member, when you want to see a huge army coming over the hill, that has to be CGI generated, and that, is expensive. But with AI, it's not expensive. Like, it's funny to think that even though those are both computer generated, one used so many actual artists and the other doesn't. It's hard to wrap your heads around.
And obviously, we're not there yet. You will look at some AI art and you will say, I can tell that that's AI. That would take me out of the moment. And you're absolutely right. Just like when you saw some of the first CGI that you ever saw, you probably were like, that's fake. I can tell that's fake. That's not real. And maybe that would have taken you out of the moment. Now we're at the point where I'm pretty sure you're wrong about half of the things that you think are CGI and aren't CGI. It's very, very hard to tell nowadays.
It's daunting. I know. And right about now, I'll bet many of you are like, aw, I thought you were going to give us a hot stock tip. Disclaimer, we're not financial advisors, okay? We're not here to give you stock tips. If you want that, go watch Jim Cramer. But I do have a hack. Consider joining our Now You Know Investor Club on Patreon. You're not only going to be supporting the independent journalism we do here every week, but you'll be helping yourself as a disruptive investor. You see, in our investor club, we have Slack set up. It's an easy way for our members to talk about everything in disruptive investing, from EVs to mining to AI to space to green energy and everything in between. You can join channels you're interested in and share ideas and information with really smart, motivated investors like yourself.
We've weeded out all the internet randos, all the scammers. It's just a nice, friendly place to discuss and learn about disruptive new technologies and companies.
Spend a few minutes a day on our Investor Club Slack, and I'll bet you'll change your investing game. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing and hit that like button before you go. It's free, but it helps us out with the YouTube algorithm, and we'd really appreciate it.
We'll see you next week on Disruptive Investing.